Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpalam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidyadravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Matrarupena Sanstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Shakti Rupena Sanstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Buddhi Rupena Sanstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Lakshmi Rupena Sanstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. So where are we in our text?
We're on page 384, 70b-71.
Can you help us out, please, Puneet?
Yeah. Jnanam vikalpa sankalpa hanam maudhya vivarjitam Jnatu swachhatma rupam tad adava anupalakshitam upalaksha evato guru shastram cha netarat. Knowledge is the giving up of imagination and resolve without insensibility or ignorance, and is the pure self-nature of the knower. That is not observed at first. Therefore, the Guru and the scripture alone are the indicators of knowledge, not another.
Yes. So let's parse this. The first part. Read the first idea for us, please.
Knowledge is the giving up of imagination and resolve without insensibility or ignorance.
So this idea of sankalpa, imagination, vrittis, thoughts, movement in the field of perception, giving it up. Vedanta's cheap. I do that every night. Fall asleep and I give up all perception of sensory objects, all thoughts. And then he says, no, it's the giving up of that without insensibility. So he's describing samadhi here. The nirvikalpa state. And again, we always look at it from two viewpoints. The first, the mind state of no mind. Earlier we had Prakasha, pure illumination, Vimarsha, deliberation. Give up the deliberation, what's left is the Prakasha. Swamiji would say, in the space between your thoughts, when the last thought is thoughted, before the next thought starts thoughting, with the attentive faculty, turn within. Then when the mind returns, it goes, oh, I get it. There's no person there. That's this pratyabhignana, this recognition, the aha. And here the shloka says, we don't seem to get that in the beginning. For some reason, the human mind doesn't think of looking for, who am I? What is my essential nature? Even the psychologists, look within, find out who you are. They think, find out about your qualities, your characteristics, be an authentic personality, but not what is behind even that. Which is why we have the instructions of the Guru and the scripture. And again, what's happening in this chapter is a summation of the teaching. Any thoughts on this verse? Next one.
Etadeva hi vigyeya swasrupam abhidhiyate jnatri jnana ye gato yavad bhedo vabhasate tavajnata jnanamapi gyeyam va na bhavet kvachit yada bhedo vigalato jnatra dinam mithastitaha tadagnatra disampatti reta etadeva phalam spritam. This knowledge, free from imagination and insensibility alone, is called the natural state of what ought to be known. As long as the difference relating to the knower, knowledge, and the known appears, so long the knower, knowledge, or the known cannot really exist anywhere. When the difference of the knower and the others mutually stands dissolved, then there is this arising of the knower and the rest. This alone is also considered as the fruit of knowledge, that is liberation. There's a note.
Here's a note.
There's a note. Should I read that one?
Okay, please.
The knower, knowledge, and the known are falsely superimposed on the one undivided consciousness, which is their real substratum. When the perception of the difference is effaced by the elimination of thought constructs, all the three together with the fruit of knowledge, that is liberation, shine as the one undivided consciousness. The appearance of difference is the absence of knowledge. The effacement of the difference is the rising of knowledge.
Yes. So I forgot to talk about the second way we look at the Nirvikopa state, which is now very important in this one. So when we achieve the mind state of no mind and the mind returns, the essential nature of the self is very evident. But if we define Nirvikopa, is that where the distinction between knower, knowing, and known is gone or merged. If we go to how do you know you are you? Knower, knowing, and known as three different things only occurs in the perception of phenomena. I, Jim, through seeing, know the table. But how do you know you are you? I am the knower. I am the pramana, the means of knowledge. I am that which is known, not as an object, but as the eternal subject. So actually, nirvikalpa is another name for the self. And if we understand that all phenomena is just a light show, Jagan Mitya, then I'm always nirvikalpa. It's my essential nature. The presence of the rainbow doesn't alter the essential nature of the sky, because it's an optical illusion. The presence of the phenomenal world does not change my nature as nirvikalpa. And again, Shankara sings this in one of the verses of Nirvana Shataka. Aham nirvikalpo. He doesn't say, I'm in the nirvikalpa state. He says, I am nirvikalpa. So we always teach both understanding of the term nirvikalpa. Any thoughts on this? Listen carefully. Nirvikalpa samadhi is not the highest state. Otherwise, we'd see all the Mahatmas just, that's not what we see. They walk around, they talk, they teach. Sometimes they retire into samadhi, but they never lose their nirvikalpa nature and their knowledge that they are nirvikalpa. Where knower, knowing, and known are the same thing. How else do I know aham, that I am? And we had this condition called sahaja samadhi, natural or continuous samadhi. Meaning it's my self-nature. It's not a mind state, it's knowledge. Next verse.
Jnatradi phalaparyantam nabhedo vastuto bhavet vyavahara prasiddhyartham bhedastatra prakalpitah ato purvam labhyamtra phalam nastyeva kinchana. In reality, there can be no difference between the entities from the knower to the fruit, that is liberation. The knower, knowledge, the known, and liberation, or the fruit. For the purpose of the accomplishment of actions, difference has been invented there. Therefore, on account of the absence of difference between the knower and the rest, there is no fruit whatever which has not existed before that is to be obtained here. Note.
So This is a convoluted way of saying the great cosmic joke is what we've been seeking, what we've been searching for, what we've been striving hard for. I've always had it. When are you ever not you? I tell you, knowledge of the self is perfect. You can't lose it, because when are you ever not you? And when do you ever not know that you are you? Even if you say, oh, I'm the most miserable of creatures, I'm not enlightened, then I would ask you, I'm so sorry, but tell me, who knows the misery? I do. Oh, you're not enlightened. Yes. You're in ignorance. Oh, yes. Who knows that you're not enlightened and knows that you're ignorant? I do. Are you you? Yes, I'm me. How do you know it? I don't know. Listen carefully, Shrinahu. The self is difficult to realize, not because it's far away or the result of some wackadoodle mind state. The self is difficult to realize because of its profound ordinariness. What is that which you never lose, which you cannot gain, which in fact, if you inquire into it, never changes? Like me. And you've always had it, and you've always known it. It's just my stupid mind comes up with all these imaginations about it. What we call adhyasa, superimposition, the biggest of which is I am my body. But that's really no different than you see a person carrying a large clay pot around all the time. Why are you carrying this large clay pot around all the time? Don't you know that's what I am? I'm a clay pot. No, you're the fellow holding the clay pot. No, wait, don't confuse me. I'm a clay pot. When in fact, do you not know the body as an object of cognition? When you were a child who had a little body, you went through adolescence, the body changed. Now you're an adult, the body is changed. Some of us are old, body's changed again. I know these changes in the body. I know it as an object as clearly as I know the glass moving in front of me. That's our direct experience. But I think, no, I'm my body. Fake news. It's yourself. Now, the second kind of knowledge, this recognition in the intellect, that is very important, because the self never has any problems. The self does not get realized. The self is not miserable. The self is not in bondage. It's my stupid mind. So the transformation happens to my mind. When the mind gets it, oh, aham brahmasmi, I am Brahman. It doesn't make you Brahman when you say that or realize it. Sure makes a difference in your mind states. You see it. You finally figure out, where is happiness? Happiness is the mind coming home to the self. So simple in the end. Next verse.
Atmaiva Mayaya Gnatri Jnanam Yeya Phalatmana Yavat Bhati Bhave Tavat Sansaro Hyachalopamaha. As long as the self alone is shining with the nature of the knower, knowledge, the known, and the fruit due to Maya, or the elusive power or ignorance, so long the course of worldly existence would indeed be like an immovable mountain.
So, the cause of it all is vasana. Vasana has two powers, Avarana Shakti, Vikshepa Shakti. The first power, Avarana Shakti. In my mind, I have the non-apprehension of my self-nature. For some reason, even though it's the most obvious thing in all of creation, I don't seem to know it in my intellect. Then there's the Vikshepa Shakti, the projecting power. I take the illusion of knower, knowing, and known, fruits of actions, etc., all that stuff, as substantive, as real, as problematic. I do not see, but in fact is the most present and obvious fact of my existence. That I am pure awareness, and I'm always present, and I never change. Such is the power of Maya. Shankara says we can't say that it is or that isn't or either. We can't say that it exists or doesn't exist or both. But we can say that it is wondrous. We can certainly say that it is mysterious and powerful. I was talking with Mauricio Wednesday. I guess that was yesterday. Tuesday. And we were tripping on the etymology of the word Maya. So the root is ma, which means not. It's a grammatical negation. So it means that which is made up of not. I just think that's a wonderful, wonderful etymology. I like to say it's the word we use to describe how the impossible seems possible? How in God's name can we not see what is so obvious once you grasp it? Oh, of course. It's not elusive. It's so here. Such as Maya. Why did I glimpse it? Very strange. Next verse.
Yada kachintade tattu bhayad bheda vivarjitam sansaro vilayam yaya chinna abhrima vayuna. But when all this would shine without any difference somehow, then the course of worldly existence would be dissolved like a broken cloud by the wind.
So it's not that this individual soul goes through some process and then I have become liberated, so I don't have to come back anymore. It is more like this. Do you incarnate into a dream? When I'm dreaming, I am caught up in worldly existence of the dream. And I may be having anxiety or stress or fun or whatever. And I have cause and effect in the dream. But am I in the dream or is the dream in me? Well, it feels like I'm in the dream, definitely. But that's not true. The dream's in me. So at the moment of realization, what do we realize? I was never born in the first place. That was an illusion. There is no person who was ever born and who struggled with past karmas and stuff. It's not real. There is no bondage and liberation for me. I am ever free. It's not what we think. I realize I am unborn, Ajati. I was never born in the first place. I never actually entered into the dream and incarnated into the dream body. Never really did the waker body either. It is just a very long and very vivid dream. That's all it is. Next verse,
Jim, I have a question.
please.
It's related to what you said earlier. You said that we're always at the place we need to be in life, right? Now, I mean, many times the place where we find ourselves seems to be, very frustrating, and there's something, our sharp edges are constantly being hit upon and grounded. So, I mean, could you break that down? That, I mean, what is it that is it supposed to just happen repeatedly until you finally get it? Or, I mean, how do you
Say
see
that
it?
again. I'm not quite sure I caught the question.
So you said that we're always at the place that we need to be, right? Wherever
From
in life,
the viewpoint of Vyavahara,
right?
from our daily transactions, as we are identified with the ego state. When you think you're a person, then that teaching is of value.
Yes, I'm talking about as connecting that state to the state that is being spoken about. I mean, can you say something about the transition from between these states?
What is the transition between the dreamer and the waker?
Of waking up?
So does the dreamer need to be on a boat or does he need to be in a car before you can wake up?
Doesn't matter.
Uh-huh. Listen carefully. The shift between the dreamer and the waker is a gross shift. Where does the dreamer go when you wake up?
Hard to say. I mean, it doesn't make
Gone.
sense to us. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
The shift between egoism and the knowledge aham brahmasmi, I am Brahman, is just as definite. It's just subtle.
I see.
Now, will that shift, does it make a difference if you're asleep on the couch or you're asleep in your bed or you're asleep on the beach when you wake up?
No.
Yeah. So from that standpoint, from the standpoint of the ego, does it matter whether you're in Chennai or Arunachala or the Himalayas or the US? No. Is that helpful?
Yes, Jim, it is helpful. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
We have to understand that the scriptures give us teaching for those of us who are identified with egoism. And these teachings really only do one thing: help us achieve a sattvic mind. From that sattvic mind state, self-inquiry can effectively take place. Then all that preparatory stuff is useless. Again, in the basic course, I talk about sharpening the knife before you cut the tomato. Once I'm ready to slice the tomato, I'm done with the knife sharpener. So, vicharena, by means of investigation, it is the wonder stored of discrimination that helps us peel away the chaff of body, prana, mind, intellect, ankara, ignorance itself. What's left? Aham. You find out if this aham changes. Keep checking it out. Check out the witness. See if the witness undergoes any change. Or if it's just the intellect or the mind or the body. which is always an object of perception. It's never the subject. You've heard me share this. I remember it so vividly because it was so impactful to me. It was at a camp and someone asked Swamiji, when are you coming to Allahabad? And he says, I go nowhere. Allahabad passes in front of me. But that's not true just of Swamiji. That's true of you and me all the time. We just don't notice it. You and I go nowhere. Just the movie keeps changing in the now. In the now. Watch the light show. The subject is kutusta, immovable like a mountain. Don't believe me. Don't believe the scripture. You find out. Oh, Swamiji, had a terrible week. I looked inside, I couldn't find myself. It was in Los Angeles this week. I was in San Francisco, but myself was in Los Angeles. No, never happens. Next verse.
Evam vidham aha mokshe tatparatvam hi sadhanam tatparatva tu sampurne jnanyat sadhana mishyate. In the realization of the great liberation of such a kind, the means is indeed exclusive devotion to it. When such exclusive devotion is accomplished, no other means is prescribed.
So in the end, the engine for our sadhana is the burning desire for liberation. I want liberation. I want self-realization. I want enlightenment. I'm a mumukshu. I tell people, self-realization is not difficult. It's easy, but it's very rare. And it's rare because nobody wants it, not because it's hard to accomplish. I want other things more. Because in my ignorance, I go after the shiny objects of people, places, things, and conditions. That's the only problem. It's the only problem. Next one.
Apurne tatparatvetu kim sahasra susadhanaihi tasmat tatparyamev syat mukhyam mokshasya sadhanam. But when exclusive devotion to it is not accomplished, what is the use of 1,000 good means? Therefore, exclusive devotion to it alone would be the principal means of liberation.
So I was with some people the other night, and I was asking them about various scriptures, various techniques, various things. Oh, they could tell me all about them. They had memorized this. But have you practiced it? I can do exactly the opposite. So we have to take the teaching to heart. Even a little bit of the teaching, if you really take it to heart, it will do it. The scriptures give us a wonderful example of this. I think it's the story of, is it Karna and Drona? Who can tell us the story about how Karna learned to be an archer?
I think I can do a pretty bad job, but I'll try. So the story goes that Karna wants to learn archery from Dronacharya, who's the best teacher in town. He's the teacher of the Pandavas, but Dronacharya refuses to teach Karna because of, I think, his caste or like a reason. He's not
He's
from
not a
the-
Kshatriya.
yeah, he's not a Kshatriya. So he refuses, and obviously Karna is very disappointed, but he still wants to learn. So he creates a sort of a scarecrow-like statue of Dronacharya made out of like, leaves or whatever. And he thinks of
That's
that.
Eklavya, I thought.
Was it Eklavya? Okay.
Eklavya is a tribal who wants to learn from Drona. Drona says no, so he makes a statue-like thing of Drona. And
Boy, I've got the wrong person.
yeah,
What's the name of the character?
Eklavya.
Eklavya. Okay.
And then in the end, when he keeps the statue of Drona as his teacher and learns archery, and in the end he comes to Drona and says, "You've been my teacher." And Drona says, "Well, it's time for my Guru Dakshina, and I ask for your right hand thumb." And Eklavya chops it right off and gives it to him.
But the point is, it was his earnestness. It was his desire to learn. And a clay guru was able to teach him. That's the point I'm getting at. This is a very important point. If the student is dull and has no mumukshutva, Shiva himself could not enlighten him. But if the student is earnest, a rock can enlighten him. Very important to know where the locus of the power. It is our earnestness. It is our mumukshutva.
To me, this story also has another small side lesson, that his earnestness of Eklavya also required some kind of a form to which to direct his effort. It was not something abstract, right?
Possibly. In the science of self-knowledge, we're not going after a form. It's myself.
Yes.
In the earlier stages of practice, you can use a form. You can use a statue or a photo of the guru. But in the end, it's yourself. If you earnestly stay with the question, Koham. Here's another classic example of it. Nisargadatta Maharaj. He only hung out with his guru for a couple of years. He did not achieve enlightenment under the teaching of his guru. His guru dies. But he simply stayed with the inquiry that his teacher had given him. And that was enough. All right, moving on.
तात्पर्यं सर्वथैतत्तु साधयामीति संस्थितिः यस्यात् पर्येण संयुक्त सर्वथा मुक्त एव सः. As regards to exclusive devotion, it is entirely staying with or constancy in the resolve, I shall accomplish this fruit that is liberation. He alone is completely liberated who is endowed with exclusive devotion to it.
Yes. So I will give you the simplest of all practices, the most direct method. It is all that you need. It is not original from Jim. It belonged to Ramana Maharshi. Stay with the question, Koham, or because he was a Tamil, Namyar. Who am I? Whatever thought or perception or feeling arises, you do this all day long, all your waking hours. You ask, to whom did this feeling occur? To me. Who am I? Keep turning the attention back on the subject. Investigate. Who am I? Keep bringing the mind back to the self. It's really the only practice you need. Again, I didn't make it up. If you can take that with complete earnestness and devotion, that's all you need. But for those of us with flagging devotion, the scriptures give us ways to improve it, improve our devotion, improve our earnestness, improve our intense mumukshutva by our vairagya. Next verse.
Dinaim ar sarvai tat saraiva mukta syad anya janvani buddhi nair malyabhedena chirashighra vyavasthitihi. He would be liberated in days, months, or years, or in another birth. The arrangement or rule as to a long or a short time for the attainment of liberation is due to the difference in the purity of the intellect.
Yes. So that's the only condition. How pure or how gross, how subtle or how gross is the intellect. That alone determines how long our sadhana is. Now, what I like to say is you take someone like Ramana Maharshi, whose total sadhana was half an hour at the age of 16 without a guru. But we don't know what a dullard he might have been in his prior life. He may have did tapas for 40, 50 years and gotten very close, but just couldn't get it. So he had just the tiniest veil when he came into this life. Who's to say? So, what does Krishna say in Gita? Commit yourself to the identity of being a yogi. In the beginning, my life isn't working, I'm having trouble with my marriage or my career or my health. And I think, well, maybe spirituality or meditation will help a bit. So spirituality becomes another medicine, another aid. I jokingly say, yeah, I go do Vedanta class after Pilates, and it's before my kickboxing class. But if you stay at it, everything turns upside down. And you find the goal of my life is moksha. And everything else, marriage, children, job, friends, are grist for the mill. That's what Ram Dass called it. That's where I work out my attachments, my aversions. Everything becomes about my yoga. Everything. Next verse.
बुद्धौ तु बहवो दोषाः सन्ति सर्वार्थनाशनाः यैर्जना सततं त्वेवं पच्यन्ते घोरसंस्कृतौ. There are many defects in the intellect which are destructive of all the objects of human life, virtue, wealth, enjoyment, and liberation, and by which people are constantly burnt in the frightful course of worldly existence in this manner.
Read it again. I'm not sure I understood it.
There are many defects in the intellect which are destructive of all the objects of human life, virtue, wealth, enjoyment, and liberation, and by which people are constantly burnt in the frightful course of worldly existence in this manner.
All right, so these are the virtue, wealth, liberation. There was a fourth one. What was it?
Enjoyment.
Enjoyment. These are our goals that we can have in life. But if we have defects in the intellect, we can't achieve any of them. And that's the problem. What are these doshas? What are these defects? What are these kleshas, these afflictions? Going on.
Tatradhya syad nashavasau dvitiya kama vasana tritiyo jadita prokta tridhaivam dosha sangraha. There, among the defects, the first one is the absence of confidence or trust or faith. The second is the mental impression due to desire, and the third is dullness of intellect. This is the summary of the defects in three ways. Note: absence of confidence or trust is the lack of the firm conviction that the teachings of the scriptures are true and will bear fruit in the manner stated. Dullness of intellect is the stupidity of the mind due to the preponderance of tamas, which makes it incapable of grasping spiritual truths.
So, in Viveka Chudamani, before we get into the qualifications of a fit student, Shankara says, he who is able to argue for the scriptures and refute arguments against them. That doesn't mean you get into spiritual data wars at cocktail parties. Where does this argument take place? In my own mind. Why? Because everything in our modern society, especially, says cash and prizes, ambition, control, actualization. Go for it. That person is really living life. They jumped out of an airplane. Everything in our society tells us that. The car we drive, the clothes we wear, the trips we take, the body we have. And it's difficult to think, oh no, the scriptures are saying real freedom is to walk away from all that. All of that's laced with sorrow. That's the hard part. Dullness is dullness. People who confuse, misunderstand, misinterpret, misread the scripture, put the emphasis on the wrong syllable, meaning in the sense that I see one small part of the teaching and obsess about that and forget the larger picture. What do we do with that intense devotion and selfless service? That'll get rid of that. Going on.
द्विविधः स्यादनाश्वासः संशयश्च विपर्ययः मोक्षोऽस्ति नास्ति वैद्याध्य संशय समुदाहृतः. Absence of trust may be of two kinds, doubt and misapprehension. Does liberation exist or not? Such like are declared as doubt.
So, there are those who say that moksha is not real. They get caught in the Vedanta logic loop. In the end, the scriptures say both bondage and liberation occur in Maya. They're not real, only the self is real. Well, why should I bother? It's all unreal anyway. Or they say, oh, my grandmother believed all that stuff. It's just superstition. We're of a scientific age. I'm an atheist. Even though this book is 1,000 years old, the same doubts occur today. Going on.
नास्त्येव मोक्ष इत्याद्यो भवेदत्र विपर्ययः एतद्वयं तु तात्पर्ये मुख्यं स्यात् प्रतिबन्धकम्. Liberation just does not exist. Such like would be misapprehension here. These two would be the principal obstacles to exclusive devotion to liberation.
For those who are agnostic atheists, materialistically minded, or they are shunyavadins. Ultimate reality is void, it's nothing. There's no point in doing anything. The nihilistic view. Going on.
Viparit nischayena nashyedetadvayam kramat atropayo mukhyatamo mulachedo na chaparah. These two would gradually vanish by contrary conviction. The foremost means in this case is the destruction of their root or cause, not another.
So, if we go back to the very beginning of the book, who remembers what is the root cause of liberation?
Sadhu Sangha, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, satsang, yeah.
So I can again only share with you my own direct experience. I had no exposure to or real awareness of the Vedanta or Eastern thought at all. And some friends took me down to Stanford to meet this Swami, their guru. Oh yeah, their guru. And meeting Chinmaya was life-changing. It was life-changing. He had what I wanted. Wasn't even sure what it was, but I knew I wanted it. So that's what happens for many of us. Then it's no longer about belief or faith in things unseen. Am I going to go to heaven? You know, will I get this benefit from this puja and all that kind of stuff? No, you meet a man or woman of wisdom. And if you have the great punya to be able to be sensitive to, go where their mind goes. See, this is real. There's a fellow who used to come to class, and I can remember the first time he got really tuned up in class. He says, "Oh, Jim, you've hypnotized us." And I said, "No, I have dehypnotized you." And we get that taste. All of a sudden, we sense there's something very real about this. That, to me, is the great swallower of our skepticism. Going on.
अनाश्वासस्य मूलं तु विरुद्धतर्कचिन्तनं तत्परित्यज्य सत्कारवत् अनस्य प्रसाधने विपरीतो निश्चय स्यात् मूलच्छेद न पूर्वकः तत्श्रद्धा समुदायाद्दान् न श्वास प्रणशस्यति. The cause of absence of trust is reflection with reasoning, which is contrary to scriptures. Having abandoned that, on the accomplishment of the practice of proper reasoning, according to the scriptures, there would be the contrary conviction. Then, consequent on the rising of faith, absent of trust or confidence perishes, preceded by the destruction of the cause.
So this is a fancy way of saying real spirituality makes sense. If you find a skillful teacher who can wield a means of knowledge and turn your mind back upon its source, you get flashes, this direct experience. Oh, I get it. There's no requirement that you believe in something fantastical. Real spirituality is profound common sense. It is reasonable. Next one.
Kama devasana buddhai shravane pratibandhika. Kama devasana vishta buddhirnaiva pravartate. The mental impression due to desire and the like is the obstructor of the intellect in the hearing of the scriptures from the Guru. The intellect overcome by mental impressions due to desire and the like does not engage itself in hearing and understanding the scriptures.
So the word here, mental impression, is vasana. So we have to purge, renounce, exhaust, annihilate vasana. Another way to frame it, all yoga is some form of vasana purgation. Some are so strong that we can do nothing but live through them. But they obstruct the intellect. They keep the mind in its state of longing, of craving. So I never get a taste of the bliss of myself. All right, it's 9 o'clock. How many more verses in this chapter, Puneet?
I think about 30 more.
Okay, so enough for several more classes. We'll end here then tonight. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Bhyo Namah. Hari Om. Oh, that's it. Thank you all. And thank you,
Jim.
for hosting and chanting.
Thanks, Jim. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Bye.